Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legion of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the Star Christ Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 312. We're covering Gaudium et Spes 26 on people are more aware of human dignity. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday we spoke about how being part of society is good and proper for mankind. Today we're going to continue chapter 2, the community of mankind. And the theme is going to be the church embracing the good things of society, like the term of rights, more connections, and social development. Paragraph 26, which is our theme today, our topic today, has 5 subparagraphs we'll read in 3 parts. A is on the common good, now more interconnected and spread out. B is on increased awareness of rights, which the church embraces. And then C to E on social development needs to help the human person. So let's get straight into A. Every day, human interdependence grows more tightly drawn and spreads by degrees over the whole world. As a result, the common good, that is the sum of those conditions of social life, which allows social groups and their individual members relatively thorough and ready access to their own fulfillment, today takes on an increasingly universal complexion, and consequently involves rights and duties with respect to the whole human race. Every social group must take account of the needs and legitimate aspirations of other groups, and even of the general welfare of the entire human family. Before we analyze this subparagraph, I want to define the common good. The common good has 2 definitions, a broad and a narrow one. A broad one is basically just all the goods of all the people in some group or society, so the common good of all. And the more narrow definition is just talking about those goods which are shared in that society, right? For example, it would talk about roads as a common good of our state or nation or things like that, and things of love in the family, things like that. Whereas, for example, my food is not the common good because it only serves me. I eat it. Nobody else can eat my food, the food that is on my plate that is going into my mouth, right? As a religious, I don't have my food in the broader sense of like I own it, but once it's on my plate, only I'm eating it. Once it's on somebody else's plate, I'm not touching that food. So, here we talk about how it becomes more universal. Because as you get wider and wider connections, you have to look at the common good of all those connections. We mentioned a common good of a state and a common good of a family. Well, now we have an interconnected world. Now I have these people I connect with across the world. How do I have, what kind of common good do I have with them? I buy products from other countries. What kind of common good do I have with them? A lot of people work for companies where they have offices all around the world and they connect and talk on Zoom and things like that. There has to be some common good of that whole company that is sought out of all the people. And finally, with regard to the common good, the Vatican II Fathers note that we need to respect various social groups. Different social groups have different aspects here. Moving on to 26b, it's talking about increased awareness of rights which the church embraces. I think here it's important to note that rights were first used as a term outside the church. And this is a new thing for the church to really be embracing them. They were first used a little before this, but one of the big moments we think of for rights is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That was published in 1948 by the UN. That's only 17 years before this document. I know for all of us, well, most of us who are listening to this podcast, we've only lived in a world with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the UN. But at this time, it was something new, and all the fathers of Vatican II were all bishops who were older, so they'd all lived in a world as adults where that was not the case. So this is something unique to look at. And the church was hesitant about embracing rights, but here she really embraces this fully. Now, with that long introduction to 26b, let's read it. At the same time, however, there is a growing awareness of the exalted dignity proper to the human person, since he stands above all things, and his rights and duties are universal and inviolable. Therefore, there must be made available to all men everything necessary for leading a truly human life, such as food, clothing, and shelter. The right to choose a state of life freely and to found a family. The right to education and to employment, to a good reputation, to respect, to appropriate information, to activity in accord with the upright norm of one's own conscience, to protection of privacy and rightful freedom even in matters religious. So you can see, as I noted beforehand, there is this embrace of rights here, which is kind of new in the church. And the church is basing rights on human dignity. We aren't just talking about rights as something that the state gives you or something you acquire. No, it's based on human dignity. And human dignity is intrinsic based on being in the image and likeness of God. So that's why it says they're universal for everyone, inviolable. You can't take them away. So this is really there. So it talks then in the second half of this subparagraph about the specific rights. First of all, the necessities for everything truly human: food, clothing, shelter. We often don't think about this, but this is something that the church teaches. That the church teaches we must provide these things for everyone in society. They have a right to these necessities of life. It isn't just like, you have to get through this or that or the other thing. Now, if someone is just being lazy and trying to mooch off the system and things like that, there can be things of like, hey, you have to actually work. You have to actually try to do something. But very often I've heard from Catholics this attitude of just, that's their own responsibility. When the church says it is a responsibility, it's a right, it's a responsibility of the whole society to give it to them. Then it talks about free choice and things like how you set up your family, education, employment, things like that. And finally, it talks about things like reputation, respect, information, privacy. And it doesn't really elaborate these rights here, just kind of list them. I'm not going to elaborate them either, but this is kind of an understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about human rights in a Catholic context. This paragraph is probably essential for that. So moving on to the last group of we're going to read, it's paragraphs C through E on social development needs to help the human person. Let's read them. C. Hence, the social order and its development must invariably work to the benefit of the human person. If the disposition of affairs is to be subordinate to the personal realm and not contrariwise. As the Lord indicated when he said that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. D. This social order requires constant improvement. It must be founded on truth, built on justice, and animated by love. In freedom, it should grow every day toward a more humane balance. An improvement in attitudes and abundant change in society will have to take place if these objectives are to be gained. E. God's Spirit, who with a marvelous providence directs the unfolding of time and renews the face of the earth, is not absent from this development. The ferment of the gospel, too, has aroused, and continues to arouse in man's heart, the irresistible requirements of his dignity. So all we do, all these kind of social development, needs to help the human person. It's not just, hey, we do this for, our own glory or for some kind of political end. No, it needs to help the human person. Obviously, politics is going to get involved in developing socially. And in these type of things, we need to keep striving to improve. It's not just, hey, we did it good. No, we need to keep doing better. We need to strive for more. We need to strive for better. And this improvement needs to be built on truth and justice. We can easily say, we improved it. We made it more technological. We implemented AI here. But didn't really make it better. Didn't really in accord with truth. One of the big issues with AI is it just tends to agree with you. So whatever you say, it's just going to agree with you. So at least the LLMs that are common right now. And so if you feed it a bunch of nonsense, it'll just say, yeah, according to this nonsense, but it won't call it nonsense. You're right. And that's a problem because it's not building on truth. It kind of takes the bubbles people have in their own social media and amplifies it by presenting it more as if it were objective truth when it isn't. Finally, God's Spirit is always there to help us. God wants to help us. God wants to bring us home here. That concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. I do this podcast on a volunteer basis, and my local religious community relies on donations to pay our bills. If you want to support my community, you can go to patreon.com/frmatthewlc. There's also a link for a one-time donation on my own site, frmatthewlc.com. You can also donate to support StarQuest at sqpn.com/give. Tomorrow we'll continue on the next paragraphs of Gaudium et Spes, which are 27 to 28, on all our neighbors. Please understand to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X.
Amen.